I recently watched all the videos that I have up on my channel right now, and I realized that I never formally introduced myself. I think for me, when I come up with a video idea, I get so excited to talk about it that when I press record, I just start talking about it. So that's probably why. But since this is the first video of 2025, Happy New Year, everyone. Now I'm gonna formally introduce myself, okay? Hello, my name is Carolina, but I go by Caro, and welcome to my channel. Okay, I see why I never introduced myself in the past. It's so awkward. Anyway, I just kind of have been in this mood to share my thoughts on things. Basically, this past week, Ethel Cain, who for those of you who don't know, she is my favorite artist of all time. She wasn't my #1 artist on Spotify Wrapped. She was actually my #3, but if it were really up to me, which I guess technically it is, but whatever. If it were really up to me, she would be my #1, okay? I love her voice, I love her production, and it's insane that she does, I think, like, all of it by herself. I absolutely adore her. And on Wednesday, January 8th, she came out with her new album, or I guess EP, I'm not really sure. It says album on Spotify, but everyone keeps saying it's an EP, so I don't really know what to call it. We'll just say album. She came out with her new album, Perverts, and wow. I think upon first listen, I felt like it wasn't really my thing, which is fine. It doesn't have to be. This project didn't have to be for me. But because I'm so intrigued by the themes of Ethel's music, I felt the need to do a lot of research on this album and kind of what it meant, what she was trying to go for, what message she was trying to send. And as I was doing research, I had this album playing on repeat and it grew on me. It's now an album that I love, and I have so many songs playing on repeat all the time since it came out. It was quite the grower, but it's phenomenal. It's a great album. I can definitely understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea. That's actually been like such a big discourse lately. Like, I remember I tried to look on Reddit to see what people had to say about this album. Most of the discourse was, oh, y'all are fake Ethel Cain fans. All you listen to is American Teenager. And then the other half was like, well, this album freaking sucks. And it's like, oh my God, shut up. Like, please shut up. To me, whether you've listened to one track by Ethel Cain or her whole discography, if you're supporting her art, you're supporting her art. So, like, why does it really matter? You know what I mean? If you don't really vibe with Perverts, the album, I hope you're not vibing with Perverts, like the people, but if you don't vibe with the album, then that's okay. Like, you don't have to, but just don't be disrespectful about it. And for those of you who do actually like the album, you also don't have to be pretentious about it. It's like, just enjoy the things that you like, and it's not a big deal. Okay, you can still be a really big fan of Ethel and not necessarily like this project too much, and that's okay. That's completely valid. Anyway, sorry, that was a little side tangent. I was doing a lot of research on this album, and funny enough, before I even listened to this album, I recently watched this YouTube video that Hayden, and for those of you who don't know, Hayden is Ethel Cain's real name. Ethel is kind of like a stage name / alter ego / character. Hayden posted this YouTube video titled The Ring, The Great Dark, and Proximity to God. And so I watched it because the title was very intriguing to me, seemed very cool and like philosophical and religious, and I love that kind of stuff. So I clicked on it, watched it, loved it. Okay, I freaking added it to my liked videos, which I don't really like a lot of YouTube videos. Like, I know some people, like, they like everything that they watch basically, but for me, like, if I'm gonna like a YouTube video, like, it really has to stand out to me. I don't know, I feel like she described a lot of things that I have been thinking so perfectly, and she actually visualized it. I'll put a picture up here of what she drew, but oh my gosh, it was amazing, and I recommend that all of you go watch it right now. I'm gonna put the link in the description. For those of you who do want to watch it, it's so good, and I'm going to be talking about it a lot in this video. But what I want to talk about in this video is kind of the themes that she talked about. It just, I don't know, I just want to yap about it. I think it's so interesting, and it relates so heavily to the themes of the album. Before I get started, I just want to say my main sources of information are the YouTube video that Hayden posted and Genius Lyrics. Shout out to Mitski's Joy on Reddit for writing the annotations on Genius. You are a genius. You are a genius. Shout out. I wrote so many notes on this album. It's actually insane. I've never felt so strongly about an album before. I don't know why. The first thing I want to go over is some terms that Hayden used in her YouTube video. I might throw them around in this video as well. So I just kind of want to define what they all mean before we get into it. She talks about the great dark, and she describes the great dark as everyday life. She calls it the muck and mire of the human experience and where we all live perpetually. It's just kind of like, in my understanding of it, it's just like the material world and the earthly plane. Then she talks about the ring. Now, this concept really, really intrigued me. Hayden defines the ring as something we all either encounter unknowingly, we seek it out, or we never experience, but it's essentially a portal of elevation and enlightenment. It is basically this portal that takes us somewhere else. And it can be all sorts of things. It can be music, it could be food, it could be nature, it could be drugs or sex, it could be all sorts of things. For me, some rings include Ethel Cain's entire discography, if we're gonna be honest. I would also consider meditation to be a ring. I would consider journaling to be a ring. I know I talk about them in all of my videos, but they're just kind of like these things that take you out of this, great dark, this like earthly realm, and they take you somewhere else. Then she talks about the divine theater, which is basically the somewhere else that I was just talking about. She defines it as an enlightened state of mind, euphoria and ecstasy of feeling spiritually enlightened, and proximity to God. To me, I consider the divine theater to be where my higher self lives. The version of myself that knows everything, that knows what's going to happen next. I see my intuition as my higher self's way of communicating with me. And the more I connect with my intuition through rings like meditation and journaling, the closer I become to this higher self. And I think that's the whole like proximity to God concept that Hayden talks about in this video. But that's the divine theater. It's kind of like that other place, if you will. And then complete opposite of the divine theater, there's the hole, which is a place of darkness and despair. If you've ever been depressed before, you kind of crawl into this hole. She says it's okay to go in this hole as long as you don't stay there forever, because the ground is sinking, and if you stay there too long, you can be sucked in and dragged into the maze, which is a place of wandering, extreme confusion, and disconnect from reality. So those are the majority of the terms that she defines in this video. But again, I still recommend you all go watch it for a little bit of more context. I kind of want to go back to this idea that she defined as the great dark. I think it's really interesting that she called it the great dark, because there is a reason why she named it that. I feel in this earthly plane that we all exist in, there is a lot of uncertainty and we don't really know where we're going. I think we're all just trying to navigate our day-to-day lives the best way we can with the little knowledge that we have. There is so much uncertainty and unknown, and that's just part of the human experience, like just not knowing and feeling confused, feeling fearful. Specifically in her songs on the album Punish and Pull Drone, she uses the phrase nature chews on me. This idea of the human experience is eating me alive. I am trapped by the human experience. I am suffering. There's a great deal of suffering that exists in the earthly plane. As you can see, look around, there is so much suffering and negativity that exists down here. I think it's natural for us to want to find ways to escape that pain and that suffering. And so sometimes we seek out these rings in our lives, right? We seek out ways to kind of disconnect with our reality. Or sometimes we don't seek it out. We actually stumble upon it. And once we do, we start to want to seek it out more, because I think people want any opportunity to take themselves out of this reality and to another world, right? So they can experience overwhelming sense of euphoria and happiness, where everything feels good. And I'm thinking back to the song Onaness. Forgive me for my mispronunciations, okay? Like, whatever. But this song, at the very end, she just says, it feels good. Living in the great dark or in this earthly plane can feel so miserable at times that when we find something that makes us feel good, even if it's just for a moment, we want to cling on to that. We want to hold on to that feeling. And the repetition of it feels good at the end of onaness, I'm just going to say it as onaness, it kind of plays into that, just like the repetition of, oh, it feels good, it feels good, it feels good. We start to realize that a big theme in this album is overindulgence and the kind of self-destruction that can create. I think sometimes it's okay to escape. It's actually good to escape. I think really attaching ourselves to the anxiety that we experience here can lead us down a really, really negative path. And so I think sometimes it's okay to find those rings in your life. I think it's okay in moderation. But something Hayden mentions in this video is too much of a good thing can turn into a bad thing. And I absolutely agree with that. I think too much of anything is a bad thing. So although it feels good to escape the pain, it can actually lead us to become so numb to emotion and we completely lose ourselves in the euphoria of the divine theater, right? I mean, let's talk about the song Amber Waves. Amber Waves is about someone who is abusing drugs in order to escape their reality, and in doing so, they isolate themselves from the people that they love most, and they also lose themselves. I mean, the very last line of the song is, I can't feel anything. In the process of trying to escape and feeling good, we end up feeling completely numb. And I also want to point out really quick how there's a lot of imagery of like fallen angels throughout this album. In Punish, there's a lyric that says, I was an angel, but they made me leave. And then in Pull Drone, there's another lyric that says, I was an angel, though plummeting. So this idea of like, I was once an angel, but then I fell. I think it's so interesting, especially when you remember like the image that I put up on the screen earlier, the visual representation of all of these ideas. I think it's so interesting how human beings were supposed to be on this earthly plane. We're supposed to stay here most of the time, but when we continuously seek out ways to escape reality, we try to keep ourselves in this other place instead of where we're supposed to be. And in a way, the universe doesn't allow you to stay there because you're supposed to be living a human experience. You're here for a reason. You're a human being for a reason. And unfortunately, you have to accept that. As frustrating as that can be, you can keep trying to escape as much as you want. At a certain point, reality is going to hit you like a semi-truck, okay? You're going to plummet down to the earth. And that's not going to be a pleasant fall whatsoever. I don't know, I just wanted to share that because it's just so interesting. Like, we think we're flying, we're up in the clouds until reality hits us in the face, and you know, we can't escape anymore. We have to accept our humanity. As I said earlier, you are living the human experience for a reason. Hayden mentioned this in her video, but living in the great dark is not as bad as it seems, because although there's a lot of pain to be experienced, there's also so much love. In my last video, I shared an experience where I felt so spiritually enlightened that I had become almost numb to feeling things, because instead of allowing myself to feel them, I'd be like, oh, well, everything's gonna be okay. Like, I had this very enlightened mindset, and although sometimes that's healthy, okay, I mean, that's the whole premise of a lot of my videos, right? A lot of the things that I learned through enlightening myself. I think it's also important to bring yourself back down to earth and realize I'm a human being. I deserve to feel the full depth of my emotions. That is why I'm here. That is why I'm living the human experience. Just because I know everything is going to be okay, that doesn't mean I shouldn't be allowed to feel like shit sometimes. And I've come to realize, like, I would much rather feel pain than to feel nothing at all. And I think sometimes, like, we just want to feel good all the time. But if you really think about it, life would not be worth living if we felt good 100% of the time. I think we have to take the good with the bad. We have to, because if there is no bad, then the good doesn't feel good anymore. It just feels like nothing. Life is cyclical. There are constant ups and downs, and as Hayden describes it, the wax and the wane, the pull and the drone. So why not embrace it? I would take a lot of the tracks in this album as cautionary tales of what can happen when we choose to completely disconnect from reality instead of choosing to own it. What can happen when we overindulge in the things that make us feel good. In the song Pull Drone, Hayden talks about the 12 pillars of simulacrum. I may have completely butchered that. I'm so sorry. And I'm just going to go down the list of all of the pillars. The first pillar is apathy. The second is disruption. The third is curiosity. The fourth is assimilation. The fifth is aggrandization, not sure. The sixth is delineation. The seventh is perversion. The eighth is resentment. The ninth is separation. The 10th is degradation. The 11th is annihilation. And the 12th is desolation. I think these 12 pillars more so describe what can happen if once you discover this divine theater, you choose to want to stay in that place as long as you can, and you choose to overindulge in some way, because it starts with being apathetic and just living your normal life in the great dark, minding your own business, then suddenly realizing that there is another world outside of your current reality that you can escape to, becoming curious and wanting to experience what it feels like to enter that world, then entering it and realizing you want to stay there. Specifically with the sixth stage, which is delineation, there's this line in Pull Drone where she says, I want to know what God knows and I will be with him. And specifically when she says, I will be with him, it's almost like insinuating, like, I'm gonna stay here. Even though we see with the next stage, which is perversion, that's not where you're supposed to be. You are supposed to be living in the great dark. You're a human being, but you are choosing to spend most of your time in this other world instead of your current reality and facing your pain head on. And following that is resentment, which is this feeling of frustration that comes with realizing that, unfortunately, you are trapped by the human experience. I hate saying trapped because it's so, like, pessimistic, and I know sometimes the human experience feels like that, but that's kind of the point. Because with the good, there's also bad. And so again, the great dark doesn't have to be such a bad thing all the time. And I think we should learn to embrace our humanity and realize, like, there is a reason why we're living it. So why try to escape it so often? And especially as a very spiritual person like myself, I think sometimes I can get so caught up in, like, what's the lesson that I have to learn, right? Through every experience, that, like, sometimes I just neglect myself of feeling all the feelings that I have, you know, because I am so quick to be like, oh, what can I learn from this? What can I take away from this experience? And I think that mindset is not healthy all the time. I think it's important to feel heartbroken at times and to feel like absolute garbage. I think we have to feel that, whether we like it or not. There's no escaping that feeling. You think you can escape it, but that catches up to you eventually. Yeah, those are kind of like my thoughts on this album. I hope I see someone on YouTube really breaking down each of the songs and what they mean. I think that would be so cool. But this is just kind of like the interpretation and the meaning that I got from this album, and also from her YouTube video. I think they both kind of go hand in hand. Life is a roller coaster, and roller coasters can be very, very scary. But instead of running away from it, why not embrace it? Why not take the ride? I've been itching to film this after doing so much research and digging deep into the album. I've low-key been going crazy, but it feels good to get it off my chest once and for all. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see ya!